demonstration that has gone on?
Well, at the golf face where protests have entered day 96, preparations are underway to celebrate once President Gotabaya Rajapaksa officially announces his resignation. At the golf face outside the presidential secretariat, there are banners calling it the people's victory. They say that the resignation of president would mean victory. So banners, fireworks, all these are ready, and there are also placards here to ensure that once the announcement is final.
All right, the protesters seem to be getting dispersed again. It seems like there may have just been a fresh round of tear gas being fired at these protesters, as Purnima Murli was reporting over there amid loud cheers by the people of Sri Lanka in Colombo right now, celebrating the departure of their President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. As we all know that he's left for Malé, the capital of Maldives, few hours ago, and the latest we are now learning is that the protesters are all set to storm inside the Prime Minister's office. There's been... Right, Purnima, please go ahead and share with us the latest details.
Well, another round of tear gas was fired just a minute ago, and protesters are seen running away from the place. We were also there nearby, but you can see tear gas being fired continuously to ensure that they disperse the crowds here. But many of these protesters are getting these water bottles to ensure that even though tear gas is fired, they try to remain safe. They do not want to leave the place. Even though the security officers are trying to disperse the crowds, every time tear gas is fired, they disperse and then they again gather. So these are the scenes unfolding outside the Prime Minister's office. Protesters say that even though tear gas is fired, they will continue to protest and they will continue to remain outside the Prime Minister's office. Those are the scenes unfolding here at the Prime Minister's office.
All right, so some very dramatic visuals coming from outside the Prime Minister's office. Purnima Murli continues to stay with us, reporting minute by minute all those details. Purnima, there's been an emergency declaration coming with the order of arresting those indulging in rioting and unruly behavior as well. Have any arrests been made so far?
Well, no arrests have been made so far. Right now, because protesters refuse to leave the place and because tear gas is fired continuously to disperse the crowds, no arrests have been made in this case. Even on Saturday, when there were anti-government protests that intensified, when protesters tried to storm the presidential palace, the temple trees and the presidential secretariat, no arrests were made then. But the incident that happened later on Saturday night, which was when an angry mob set the Prime Minister's private house on fire, that's when 3 of them were arrested. But for the anti-government protests that have taken place till now, where no untoward incidents have been reported, where no property was damaged, no arrests have been.
All right, we seem to be losing Purnima's audio over there, but those are the latest visuals that we are bringing to you from Colombo outside Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe's office. The latest that we're learning is that the cops, the police officers have also left the office of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. We saw many police officers leaving the Prime Minister's office, and the latest is that a fresh round of tear gas has been shelled. I am also joined in by our international affairs correspondent Abhishek Jha with us. Abhishek, if you could take us through all that's happening right now, and for the constitutional powers to actually prevail is secondary, because the situation on ground zero, especially for the Prime Minister, actually remains very tense. And for the Prime Minister, the biggest challenge right now is to actually take charge, or rather control what's happening in Colombo.
So, Akanksha, it looks like the situation is turning volatile every passing minute, because it looked like on the 9th of July when the protest had its was at its peak actually, and then we saw how Gotabaya announced that he is going to resign. Ranil Wickremesinghe also announced that okay, he will also resign. But now in the last 24 hours, there has been change of events which has caused outrage among protesters. Rajapaksa has, with his family, left the island.
All right, Abhishek,
to
stay with
Maldives.
us. I believe Purnima is back. Let's quickly go across to Purnima. Purnima, take us through all those latest developments. All right, I think we are still trying to re-establish that connection with Purnima. Abhishek, please go ahead.
So this whole anger and the latest surge of protest is coming from the fact that the Gotabaya Rajapaksa was allowed to leave. In fact, he was allowed to leave on an official Sri Lankan Air Force plane in the capacity of Sri Lanka's president. That is something has also angered people because they were expecting that Gotabaya Rajapaksa will be told to stay back. They were trying everything that Gotabaya does not flee the country because we saw how Rajapaksa and his family members were stopped by immigration people at various airports, and they were not allowed to board any commercial flight or chartered flight. Still, the Sri Lankan Air Force has now done something which has angered people. Meanwhile, Ranil Wickremesinghe, who automatically becomes president of Sri Lanka in the absence of the current president Gotabaya Rajapaksa, is trying to exercise some executionary power by imposing curfew in parts of Sri Lanka. This is something which is again not going to help the situation, not going to pacify the ongoing protest. In fact, ever since that curfew announcement has happened, there have been reports of a scuffle between protesters and security personnel. In fact, the latest we have is that the protesters are trying to enter the office of the Prime Minister, which is Ranil Wickremesinghe's office. His personal residence has already been set ablaze 2-3 days ago. So we know that Ranil Wickremesinghe does not have any confidence sort of as a leader who can lead the people of Sri Lanka. He's just hanging on there by virtue of being a constitutional authority that in absence of the president of Sri Lanka, Prime Minister automatically becomes the president until and unless there is an interim government which is formed. Now all the political parties are trying to make an arrangement for an interim government where again there is a confusion of who is going to be the leader of that interim government. There are names. Sajid Premdasa is also one of the contenders who has said that who is going to be the leader who will be taking Sri Lanka away from all the crisis. But as of now, we know that now the situation of Sri Lankan domestic politics sounds very volatile. Still, we have not have any report on whether Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who has announced that he will resign on 13th of July, has actually submitted his resignation or not. And in this chaos, people are not, this is not enough to pacify people, and this is in fact, making them more angry. Crowds are swelling at important places. There have been reports of firing, tear gas shells are being fired on. But then there's so much huge crowd of people that it's almost like a hide-and-seek game between protesters and security personnel. Once there is tear gas shelling, they leave the scene. But soon enough, they gather again and they again try to storm into the places and defy curfew. This is a scenario which is unfolding in currently in Sri Lanka, both politically and in a way the law and order does not look good. And of course, the reporter has been reporting from ground. It's very volatile situation that we can.
Right, Abhishek, I'd also like you to take us through what has been happening as far as these protests are concerned. We all know that today is the 96th day of these protests. These Go Gota Go protesters are ready to ensure that no one in the current dispensation actually stays on, whether that is Gotabaya Rajapaksa or Ranil Wickremesinghe. On Saturday, we saw some very dramatic happenings take place at the presidential palace, and today we might just witness a repeat of what happened on Saturday. The target, of course, remains the Prime Minister today.
You see, Akansha, the kind of protest that they are having and the kind of sustainable momentum that they have gathered is are telling enough that these protesters are not going to go back unless and until their demands are heard. Two demands. First, the Rajapaksa family should have resigned, or they should be held accountable for the kind of mess that they have created in terms of economic crisis and both in terms of political crisis in Sri Lanka.